Grandest Bookshop in the World by Amelia Miller. The curtain tore off in Pearl's hand. The cold punched all the breath from her lungs. The current dragged her sideways. She tumbled helplessly, the roar of the sea in her ears. Something slimily brushed her face. Then her shoulder slammed against a cabinet, and she fell to the floor, bringing down an avalanche of brick-heavy volumes. Pearl rolled over, gasping. She sat up and looked around the exit. The exit to Wonderland had burst open, washing her out into the arcade proper. Valley was lying in a pile of scattered books. He raised himself on hands and knees and picked one up. It was drenched. "Oi!" Bill Pike marched towards them, all managerial bustle. "What are you two playing at? Knocking down my shelves?" "Sorry, Mr. Pike," said Pearl. The window to the deep turned into a fish tank and broke open. "It did what?" "We nearly drowned." Valley gestured at his clothes, but he was dry. Pearl touched her skirt. Dry. She felt her hair. Dry. Valley's pocket watch in his hand. Dry and still ticking. The last puddles vanished before Mr. Pike had a chance to see them. "Wait!" Pearl turned back to Wonderland. The archway was dark. "There was a whole sea here. Mr. Pike, all these fish got out." Beckoning him, she ran into the Wonderland gallery, but no trace of the ocean remained. Where the windows to the deep should have been, there was only broken glass in an empty frame. Where the window to the deep should have been, there was only broken glass in an empty frame. Bubble and Squeak's terrarium held only a tattered snakeskin. The mirrors were grimy, and one was lying face down on the floor. The praxinoscopes and mechanical amusements were draped in a cloth under a decade's worth of dust. The unicorn horn was lying at the foot of the wall of wonders. They had solved the puzzle, but that hadn't stopped the obscure smith sucking the life out of the arcade. "It's true, Mr. Pike," said Pearl, honest. She had the wrenching sense that she was seeing something she wasn't meant to. She looked away to spare the poor arcade its shame. By her feet lay a scrap of something green. The only bright thing in the room, it was another bouquet, smaller than the last. All the buds were closed. Pearl wanted to run to Mr. Gabriel's desk right away. Valley was picking up books, though, which made her feel guilty. The red bands of the rainbows were mostly still intact. They had enough time to tidy up. She collected the flowers and the unicorn horn and went to join him. "What's that for?" Pearl shrugged and put the unicorn horn on a book cabinet. "Unicorns can protect you from evil. I thought it would be good luck." "Can orcs protect you from evil?" "What are they?" "A type of antelope." Valley jerked his head at the magnificent horn. "You do know unicorns are only a myth, don't you?" She didn't think he was being cruel. It was just his matter-of-fact nature. To him, science didn't ruin the wonder of things. It was the wonder of things. He simply forgot sometimes that his little sisters didn't think the same way. Pearl thought unicorns might be real, the same way she believed a secret population of clever dodos might still survive somewhere in the world. But all right, perhaps this was the horn of an antelope. That could still be lucky. After all, a wild antelope would be nearly as beautiful as a unicorn, and its horns would protect it from lions. Pearl resolved to do two things. The first was to not fight with Valley about the existence of unicorns. The second was to keep the horn. So, she said, picking up a stack of cookbooks, the answer was an A. It was. What about being in pairs? She put the cookbooks back on the shelf. I don't know any words with a double A. Valley bleated like a sheep. Bar isn't a word, it's a noise. He pushed a row of thick volumes together and slotted another between them. I think it's just meant there's an A in the words, pairs and alone. Pearl picked up another book. There's an A in heaven, and it said there wasn't. Silent in heaven, you spell it with an A, but you don't pronounce it. Oh, said Pearl, well done. They tidied quietly together for a while. Pearl tried to remember the riddle, but could only think of a few lines. The memory of the sea filling her mouth and tugging on her skirt had shoved it out of her mind. Valley? He turned to look at her. Can you tell me next time? Tell you what? How you work things out? Pearl took a deep breath. Because it felt pretty rotten when I was trying to think of answers, and you kept saying no one to them without telling me why. He broke her gaze and shuffled more books into place, checking to make sure they were arranged alphabetically. We have 6 more rounds to play, she said, and if you're going to keep acting like you know everything and I don't know anything, we won't be able to spade him. Valley straightened a few of the book's spines, which to Pearl's look straight already. Sorry, I'll try not to. Thank you, Pearl said, and I'll try to think about things before I call them out. He looked strangely relieved. We should try to find out what that new bouquet says. Where did we leave Mr. Gabriel's books? As Pearl looked around for them, she locked eyes with Mr. Pike. He was glaring at her, making sure the job was finished. It was hard to imagine this bespectacled man as the boy Pa had hired at the old market bookstore. He was so practical, so old, more so than Pa, who in some ways had never grown up. Upstairs, she muttered to her brother, picking up the oryx horn. It had been a long week to be the manager at an ailing book arcade. With closing time approaching, the second floor was deserted. The arcade was quiet. The last few customers were off in their own worlds. Most of the shelving boys had gone home. It was usually a peaceful time of day, but tonight it seemed too still. Pearl marched ahead and put the door of the flat between herself and the emptiness. Can you tell what these are? She waved the bouquet at Valley as he brought Cole's funny picture book and Mr. Gabriel's guides inside. He thumped the tower of books on the dining table and examined the tight buds. Looks like they're all the same species. One meaning then? Don't know. The brass taps rattled as he filled 2 vases at the sink. One for the bouquet, one for the second. We'll have to wait to see what they become. Pearl stared at the new flowers and half convinced herself they were opening, like the creeping of an hour hand around the face of a clock. How long do we have to wait? Just long enough to go mad. Probably her brother plucked off a bud. Don't let the suspense get to you. If we go into the next round all flustered, we'll mess it up. He sliced the bud open with his thumbnail, but the petals were green, and crumpled. Let's take them again in half an hour. The bed was too hot. Pearl's long nightie tangled around her legs like hungry tentacles. She kept jolting awake from the brink of sleep. She didn't like waiting. She wanted to spend every minute she had worked on the game. But Ma had forced her to go to bed, once at 10:30, then more angrily at midnight. When Pearl had gone up to check on the buds, they still had been closed, but the orange bands of the rainbows had begun to disappear. She envied her sisters. Ivy's face was as calm as an angel's. Linda snored softly. The 5th or 6th time Pearl forced her eyes open, it was to a strange stillness. No horses passed outside. The arcade's last customers had left hours ago. No chatter wafted from the sitting room, no whispers from the boys' room. She knelt on the bed to peek out the window, but even the street lamps had gone out. Dawn was a long way off. Then she heard the music. It was a lovely tune, a polka full of mischief, careful not to disturb Ivy beside her. Pearl got up and went to the kitchen. The music continued. Pearl found a candle, lit it, and carried it in its holder to the table. The clock in the kitchen showed it was just past 3:00, and sure enough, the flowers had opened, 5 purple petals around a black center. Pa had once grown blue ones in a pot on the roof. They had a name like the Queen. Victoria, she murmured aloud, flicking through the flower dictionary. She traced the columns: valerian, verbena, veronica, violet, viscaria, oculata. Dance with me. Triumph surged within her. Reading was lovely in its comfortable, quiet way, but dancing was fun. She ran to the boys' room as lightly as a ghost. She turned the doorknob without letting it click. The boys had their own beds nowadays, as did Linda, a teenage privilege Pearl was looking forward to. Valley's was on the far side of the room. The floor creaked as she edged across towards him. Valley, she touched his bare shoulder. Val? His face creased in a frown. Valley, get up. It's time for the next round. Pearl was trying to shield her brothers from the candlelight with her hand, but her voice made Eddie stir in his sleep. With a grunt, he rolled over and go away. Pearl stood still, afraid she had woken him up. Get out of here, mustard, Eddie mumbled angrily. No one likes you. Pearl had to fight so hard to keep her giggles in. She almost dropped the candle. It's all right for you to laugh. Valley found his pajama shirt and pulled it on as they tiptoed through the flat. The absolute nonsense he wakes me up with. Shh! Pearl was trying to listen to the music. She had heard the Book Arcade band play it before, but that couldn't be right. The band had all gone home yesterday evening. The orange stripes of the rainbows were nearly half gone. Pearl guarded her candle from the breeze as she and Valley descended to the first floor. The bandstand was on the far side of the arcade. Closer up, it was hard to believe she was the only one the music had woken. The racket seemed enough to rouse the whole of Burke Street. When they came upon the band, she was surprised to find the musicians weren't in their red velvet jackets. They too looked as if the obscure smith had lifted them out of bed and dropped them in their places. Miss Finch had on a sweeping, glamorous nightgown. Mr. Chillingsworth, the conductor, wore an old woolen nightshirt and cap. Even though it was a warm night, Pearl tried to step onto the dance floor below the stand, but she couldn't. Her way was blocked by an invisible force. "I think those are for you," cried Mr. Chillingsworth through his thick white whiskers. Pearl followed his line out of sight. 2 outfits were spread on a pair of chairs nearby. A dinner suit with a top hat and a blue ball gown. Beside the gown lay a pair of gloves and a headband topped with a large white flower. She set down her candle, for the gaslight was bright enough to see by, and scooped up the shimmering dress. What are you all doing here?" asked Valley. "We woke up here," said Miss Finch, as her fingers scrambled over the piano. "Sorry to disturb you, but we can't seem to stop." Valley gave her sister a questioning glance. She realized she hadn't told him about the flowers. The clue was "Dance with me." Pearl was excited to begin. She'd always liked dancing, with at parties, at family concerts with Ruby and Ivy, or even for her toys in the playroom. But she'd never had it going as fine as this, or as long. Children didn't wear full-length skirts. She pulled it up over her nightie. Its silk train extended a foot longer than the rest of the hem. It had a stiff bodice to give the wearer a small waist, and a bustle at the back to give them a large button, which would make the waist look small still. No wonder most ladies these days wore slim, bell-shaped gowns that skimmed the top of their feet. They were much more practical. Still, it was strange to think so many people continued to have their servants tight-lace them every day. The sooner the rational dress movement caught on, the better. Nobody out to be imprisoned by their clothes. Valley went behind the nearest bookshelf to change. He did it with a great deal of muttering and straining. Pearl's gown was loose. It pulled around her feet and tried to slip off her shoulders. She held up the bodice with one hand, bundled the skirts with the other, and found Valley in his nook. "Could you lace me up, please?" "Just a minute." The trousers weren't cooperating. The legs were too short. No matter how he sucked his stomach in, he was having no luck with the fly. His shirt, likewise, was tied across the chest. Even though he'd taken off his pajamas, the whole outfit was too small for him. Pearl looked down at the dress, sagging and slipping off her body, and felt the shiver of a dreadful brainwave pass through her. "Val, I don't think that will fit you. I don't think that suit will fit you." He gave up on the trouser button and glared at her. "You don't say. I think it might be for me. If you wear this, what will I?" His eyes fell on the gown and widened in horror. "No." "Oh, come on, Valley. I'll dance in my pajamas." He drew himself up, puffing his chest so much that one of the buttons burst off his starched shirt. You're not getting me into a dress. The gown matched Valley's eyes. The white flower sat perfectly scented on his blonde head. The silk gloves barely creased at his elbows. Pearl had laced up his bodies good and tight and helped him with his shoes. Valley wasn't half as gracious, grumbling as he knotted her bow tie. Thou stop. The stiff collar pressed hard on her throat. That's too tight. It's supposed to be like that, he mumbled. What are you making such a fuss? I'd rather wear trousers. Well, I'd rather be a sugar glider, Valley, but we can't always get what we want. Why a sugar glider? I like them. Anyway, men can wear skirts. Name one who doesn't. Monks and Scotmen and ancient Greeks, robes and kilts are completely different. Pearl rolled her eyes. It's just clothes, Val. It's not going to turn you into a girl. Are you sure? He tugged the skirt, as if to shake any hidden magic out of it. Pearl glanced at the rainbows below the second floor balconies. The orange stripes had shrunk again. And what would be wrong with that? I like myself the way I am. I could call you Valerie and you could call me Paul. Or I could call you Pill because you're being one. All the while, the band had been stuck on the same polka, repeating it whenever they came to the end. Pearl took her brother's gloved hand and stepped onto the dance floor. He tried to put his arm around her waist. That hand has to go on my arm. I'm the lead. Valley clicked his tongue in annoyance. And you have to put your hand like this. She rearranged their fingers so that his hand closed over hers. Like a waltz. Valley twisted his hand. My fingers need to go on top. No, they don't. Well, they should. You're shorter. But I'm the gentleman. I should lead. You are a constant irritation. In the tussle, Pearl's top hat fell to the floor. At once, the lively beat ran faster. We mustn't fight, Valley. She pulled the hat back on. This time, he let her take the leading position. Now, a polka is really easy. It's mostly just stepping and hopping, while you're also going around in a big circle by turning in little circles. That doesn't sound really easy. Think of us as the earth and the middle of the dance floor as the sun. Okay. Good. I'll take care of the turns. You just concentrate on your feet. Let's go. Step, hop. Step, hop. Valley stepped backwards, stumbled on his hem, and collapsed in a puff of silk. The tempo sped up again. The musicians exclaimed in surprise and frustration. Damn these hills! Valley swished his train behind him and clambered upright, accepting Pearl's proffered hand. They're pinching me. Well, hopefully we'll get it right soon, said Pearl, and go. Step, hop, step, hop. Step, hop, step, hop. Now step, hop, step, step, hop. He tried to pull Pearl into his step as she hopped and fell out of time again. The tempo jumped up another notch. The collar pressed Pearl's throat tighter. She stuck her fingers inside her collar and pulled at it. It didn't seem to help. No wonder they call these father killers. That was your fault. You changed it. Well, we can't do the exact same steps for the whole song. Anyway, I'm allowed to change it because I'm the lead. He let his arms fall to his sides. This is silly. I'm going back to bed. What about Pa? Riley tried to huff, but his dress was too tight to draw enough breath for a proper sigh. This thing is breaking my ribs, and the music keeps getting faster, and I can see the orange stripe getting smaller, and you're bossing me around? I can't handle it. Then let me. She took his hands again. I know how to do this, Valley. Just let me lead. He didn't say anything to that, but put his hand daintily on her arm. Off they went again. They danced 6 bars before Pearl moved on the wrong foot. The shoes pinched so hard she thought her feet would burst out at their toes, but she was determined not to stop. The music sped up. The horn player's cheeks were so round and red that he seemed in danger of exploding. Pearl guided her brother through the steps. Step, hop, big spin, heel, toe, heel, kick, kick again. Valley tripped on his train. Again, the clothes squeezed tighter. Again, the tempo increased. Sorry, keep going. If it went any faster, they'd never be able to keep up with the band. The starched shirt was crushing Pearl's throat like a boa constrictor. She was trying to lead Valley, and he was still resisting a little, awkward though he was in his evil clothes. Step, hop, step, hop. Any moment, they would stumble and crash. Step, 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 hop. Any moment, an instrument would break. Step, hop, big spin. Or Valley would make a mistake again. Heel, toe, heel, step, hop. Or one of them would choke to death to the stupid, jaunty song. Pearl! Valley looked up from his feet. I think we've got it. Step, turning out. Step, turning in. Turn out, turn in. I'm concentrating. Counting them out loud with me. It was the first time Pearl had seen him look happy all week. Step, hop, step, hop. Step, 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 hop. He'd got it right. Pearl was as pleased as she was surprised. Step, hop, big spin. She joined in. Heel, toe, heel, step, hop. They were both counting out at once now. Out, in, step, 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 hop. Step, 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 hop. Their hops were neat and regular, a little burst of joy at the end of each bar. They were in perfect synchronicity, backwards orbiting around each other, swirling around the floor. Step, hop, step, hop. It was like a skipping rope chant. Step, 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 hop. Step, step, kick, kick. Step, step, kick, kick. Heel, toe, heel, step, hop, big spin. And the music stopped. Pearl pushed back the brim of her top hat. Her head was whirling, the collar as hard as an iron shackle around her neck. The musicians were lifting their hands and mouths away from their instruments, their eyes wide with relief and wonder. They began to applaud. They stood in their nightshirts and dressing gowns, free at last. Then Valley surprised her. Facing the musicians, he gathered up 2 big handfuls of skirts and swept an extravagant curtsy. He didn't bob his head, as was proper, but flopped his whole body forward like a dying water bird. The band laughed, and as Valley stood up, he was grinning. He patted her on the back. Your turn, Pearlie. Pearl almost curtsied herself, then remembered she was the gentleman. She bowed deeply, flourishing her hat. The band doubled their applause, and somebody whistled. Though her neck hurt and her head spun, she couldn't help smiling. She